So ho. Sorry, my voice is a bit rusty. My kids bring a lot of colds was from their kindergarten, and you still gotta earn your money. So here I go. So this week we have a nice old Hofner from the late 50s, I guess like 58, 59, 57 maybe. This is a 17-inch all maple laminated guitar, and I just got it I bought it and it said it needs it needs work or needs to be restored, and there weren't the best pictures really. And this is how I got it. You can immediately see that the action is very high. The bridge doesn't sit. The bridge is all the way to the bottom. There was a tune-up button missing. No big deal. It had a pickup once and probably a volume pot in the pickguard. So I mean, the only thing you can do with that is actually add a new pickup. Otherwise, it just looks bad. And my favorite surprise was a nice crack in the heel. Like this, there was no clear picture of this. This is always, it's no problem to get this repaired, but it always remains visible unless you refinish in black or something. So this is not something you would like to find usually. Yeah. Someone stuffed in some stuff in the crack, and I will later find out when I take off the heel cap that this actually already repaired with 2 screws. So we gotta just make this prettier. Look, this guitar really looks awesome. They used some awesome flamed maple. I don't know, you don't find this kind of maple on mid-budget guitars nowadays anymore. It's just really great. The strap button broke off here. No big deal either. What else do we have? Some usual playware. This is a laminated guitar, and laminated guitars usually don't crack. Like if you see cracks in the top or on the bottom, you usually can tell that this is solid. So it's also a good thing, you can repair those. And those laminated guitars don't really crack. So the first thing or the next thing I like to do always in this 50s or older guitars is to check if the braces are still, attached properly. Because this is one of the most annoying things to repair in archtops. Especially if you don't want to, you really don't want to take the bottom off this kind of guitar, because it's just a lot of work and this don't cost a lot of money. So this is kind of a economic disaster if you have to do that. And there's usually some ways of, sometimes you can get around it, but these braces were fine. They all look good. The guitar's in a good structural shape if you leave out this crack in the heel. There's some problem zones in a varnish, but it's an old guitar and it's fine. It's not something that is a problem for the guitar. It's only a visual aspect. A lot of dealers especially judge guitars by their visual appeal, because to make them play great, it's a lot of work, and usually you can't afford it with those guitars. But if you put the necessary work into them, they can play almost as good as new. And some people, collectors, they want to see that a guitar is in pristine condition. That's what they go for. But most people actually want to play that guitar. And I can only tell you, those guitars who are played the most sound the best. If they have playware, if they have visual signs of use. But you're not looking for neglect. You're looking for a guitar that was played and taken care of. Those are the best, and they're usually not the expensive ones either. So just go for those. Here you can see a very common problem with his old German tail pieces. I'm not sure if that's in other guitars too. Like in the 60s or 50s, the ball ends on strings were a little bit smaller. So when you put in modern strings, they kind of get stuck in the hole. It's not, if you know how to get them out, it's no big problem, but I'm pretty sure for some people this is annoying. You could just see I hammered it out with a tiny Allen, or you can take a nail or the pliers. This is a guitar. I want to level the whole neck straight, because it's not really straight. So you have to take off the nut, and in this kind of guitars, where you have a 0 fret, you have to be very careful about that, because behind the 0 fret there's just like 2 millimeters of fretboard, and it's very easy to break that off. So you have to be careful when taking that off. Yeah, I'm trying to ream those holes a little bit bigger. It will help next time to get the string out. But unfortunately, this problem is hard to solve. Because these holes are really pretty much as big as this whole holder. So if you widen them, say, like even 0.5 millimeter, you risk like destroying the whole thing. So this will make it better. You can also just put something on a string in front of a ball end, like a small metal part that completely prevents the ball end from dropping into the hole. But I guess it's a bit fast. So now we take the frets out, the nut off, and then we are able to level that fret. But also, as you saw before, the action was very high, and the reason why many vintage guitars have so high action is not that they have a banana neck. The neck isn't really straight. It's not too bad though, but that is not the main reason why the action is so bad. The main reason is the action is so bad is that the neck is on the wrong angle, and that is when the guitar needs a neck reset. And I think this this phrase is a bit misleading, because there's 2 reasons why a guitar needs a neck reset, and you can see here, you can see clearly here, the neck is already rocking in its pocket. It was almost off. There was just a tiny bit attached, and well, I was sure it comes off easily, but then it wouldn't do anything. Anyway, this neck is not really attached properly to the neck block anymore, and that's why it changed its angle. But this is only one reason why it needs a neck reset. The other reason is that the strings pull with a high kind of tension on the whole wood construction, and it's a light wood construction. And when you put a string on a bow and arrow, like this bow, it will bend, and the whole thing, kind of bends out of shape over the years. And the same happens with a guitar. It will just deform. Any guitar will deform when under string tension for decades. So what does that mean? If you just put in the neck back in the pocket like it was, the neck angle will still be wrong. You don't have to reset it, you have to refit it. You have to change its angle to adapt to the new geometry of the guitar, because the geometry changes. So if you do this yourself, if you kind of know how to work with wood and everything, I've seen many of those guitars where people reset the neck themselves, and they did kind of good job on it, but they didn't understand that you have to change the angle. And then you have a guitar where someone really used the modern glue, put the neck in, and the neck is tight, but you don't want to get that out again, and the neck angle is still off. So if you put it back on, you have to be aware that you have to tilt it back a bit, and then you have to be aware of the fact that once you put a string on, probably the angle will change slightly once again. Like here, the neck is almost off. I'm always putting on some heat and then rocking. And this really felt to me that like there was a dowel inside, but unfortunately when I take off the neck, the camera's off and there was no dowel. It was just, there was one little part of the wood still attached. And if you force it off, you often break something, because this neck was really rocking in all directions. You can rock it to the left, to the right, up, down, and you kind of see where it's moving and where it's not. And then you can put in heat on the place where it's not moving. But this was kind of working in all directions. So the place that was still attached was in there. So here I thought I will not get around it, and I have to, drill holes for the heat sticks. So I prepared the holes for drilling. But then I tried one more time afterwards and it just popped off. And it didn't break anything really.
Next round.
This can be... you never know what you get with those. And I wasn't sure if someone was on there before. It looked a bit like... Certainly something happened with his neck before. But this is always a bit disconcerting. Oh, no, concerning. Sorry. Because you never know what you find. That's why most people really don't like to do this. Anyway, now, next try, the camera was off and it popped off. Sorry that I didn't get that on camera. I will show you the results. I thought I filmed that. Maybe these videos are not all in the right folder, I'm not sure. Anyway, here I start sanding the neck flat with a straight aluminium block and 100 grit sandpaper. And you frequently check how straight the neck is already. Because if you sand it for too long, then it will at some point of time develop a back bow, depending on how you sand. And yeah, that's something you don't want. A little back bow can actually be fine on those, because string tension will still bend it straight. But it's always a gamble. Also, when I have this old necks without truss rod in there, I like to put in bigger frets, like bigger frets with bigger feet. Those German guitars usually have a narrow fret slot, and if you just put in modern frets, they're very annoying to get in, but they kind of bend the neck backwards and give it some stability. So anyway, after I sanded it straight, I used a radius sanding block and put in a 7.5 inch radius on the fretboard. It was already more or less. But those usually, they don't have a perfect radius, those old guitars, the old German Hofner guitars, so they sometimes have anything between 12 and 6. I've seen actually more than 6 already. And that gets very annoying to fret when you're using your fret press, because you don't have this kind of inserts available. And so here I use and check with a little 7.5, 2.75 inch radius fret press call how good it is, and then you continue. I'm not showing everything here, it's just one step after the other. And of course you always have to vacuum the dust off and so. And those inlays, they're really gonna be scratched. But I have to sand them down with a whole fretboard. This is not a guitar where you take off the precious inlay and deepen the inlay slots or something like this. This doesn't make any sense here. And then when I'm fine with the results, I use sandpaper up to 1600, I think, on this board. Or 800. 800 is honestly good enough, but 1600 looks better. I think for the hands it doesn't make much of a difference. But, you know, if it's shiny, people want it. Now I'd get some oil and some cleaning with naphtha, and I wet it with a wet cloth and sand it again afterwards. And because I don't want to wait too long, I just use a heat gun to dry it. But be careful not to heat this plastic too much. But this is fine. I usually set this heat gun on around 150 degrees Celsius. And if you're not holding it into one place for too long, you will usually not damage any finish or plastic. But you have to keep it moving. Don't hold it in one place. So now we go through the grids to make it smooth and pretty. Yeah, when I was taking off the neck, I really felt like it was weird that this crack wasn't moving at all. Like the crack in the neck heel, because I didn't know then that there was already two screws holding everything very firmly in place. So then I thought probably I have to take apart the neck. But once someone put in two screws in there, it's kind of what it is. You know, it's stable as it is. But the better way to repair this, I think, would have been to first glue it back together and then put in the screws. Because when you already put in the screws, you can't, you know, force it back together. And usually when you drill the holes into something open, you will, you know, put in the screws and they will not press it together because the holes are aligned in such a way that the screw actually won't press the wood together. So you always have to glue it together first and then add the screws, not other way around. Other way around doesn't work. Well, but this is a visual problem really at this point, but still, of course, it would be nice if there wouldn't be a gap. I would close that gap with super glue, with tainted super glue. I will make it prettier, but this will remain a visual problem zone forever. And I think it's fine. It's an old guitar. It has its history, and it's way beyond collectible state anyway. Yep. I'm lucky here that the spining was already thought through, so I'm not there. I have more choices when it comes to frets and how to deepen the fret slots. Like this is how it looks like. This is kind of weird rosewood. It's very open pore. It's like not so dense. And this guitar will fret horribly. I've fretted, I don't know, 200, 300 guitars already, and this was one of the worst ones for sure. The result is good, but I don't know. This was not a happy fretboard. No, not nice. So now I decide to take the tuners off because why not? I'm already cleaning with naphtha, and I wanted to clean the headstock a bit. I will still give that a light polish later, and the tuners have to be repaired anyway with new buttons, and you kind of want them off the guitar for that. At least it's the original tuners, and I think this guitar is actually all original state with some modification and a pickguard. I will now shine the inlays, because you can, you know, sand wood up to 800 or 1600 and it will look really nice, but inlays, they will still be scratchy and they will still look bad. Not a big problem, but if I'm already making a video up, I do it right. this is a kind of worn-out vintage guitars, and you can basically do a million things to it if you had unlimited amount of resources and time. But after all, I try to pay my rent doing this, and this guitar is just gonna be worth a certain amount of money. And if I spend 2 weeks with this guitar, no one will pay me for that. People kind of want something that either looks good or plays good. And I'm usually going for the direction plays good, and if I can make it look better, of course that's nice too. Unfortunately, people buy guitars with their eyes, and we can be honest about that. If you see a guitar that just looks cool, you want it. You don't imagine how it sounds like. We buy it by visual appeal, and then also we wanted to play and sound good. But most people who deal with anything, that people will buy stuff based on the visual appeal most of the time. And this is, what you get. This is what I do with all the guitars that I sell. They have their visual flaws, but they're generally in very nice playing condition, and it's a lot of work. But most people don't, most people are no luthiers or no techs on that. They don't understand how much work that is, and they kind of judge the guitar by their visual appeal. And I would do that if I wouldn't know more about it. So half of the work that you do, is kind of make it look decent, look nice. Repair could be very quick if it doesn't have to be invisible or smooth looking in many ways. If you glue a crack, just securing the crack with a cleat and some glue just takes 10 minutes maximum. But then to fill the gaps, to polish it, to smooth it out, that takes way more time. And that is what that will look professional, but it won't really change the quality of the repair. But it will be the thing that consumes all the time. Anyway, here to demonstrate what I mean, I'm now going. I think I went all the way up to 12,000. So this inlays really is shiny. When this open pore fretboard will never really be super shiny because it's not dense enough. And as I said before, these German fret slots are very narrow. I think those were just like 0.4. That's kind of standard in 50s, 60s, 70s German guitars. So that gives you, if you never fretted an instrument and you get normal frets on this fret slot, you already lost before you started. You have to kind of adapt to the situation. Just to be able to get in the normal frets with 0.6 tang width, as you say, like the foot, you really have to widen the entrance. Like with a 3-cornered file and with a saw. I checked how deep this fret slots still are, and I think I deepened them a little bit, but often they're sawed deeper as they have to be from factory. So I just, with a very thin saw, get the dust out and everything, and make sure there's nothing in a way that stops the fret of going all the way down. Fretting is usually, like, to put in the frets is only as hard as you make it. If you prepare the fretboard right and the fret slot, and the frets have the right shape, you bend them, the fret slots have the right size, you have the right tools, then putting in the frets is just a small fraction of the work. It's not the difficult part, really. You have to adapt each time to the wood, to the neck, to the situation, and every fretboard frets really differently somehow. So, if you never did that, almost impossible to understand how different those woods behave. Well, sorry, I'm off camera here, just deepening the fret slots, and I will put jumbo frets on this guitar. I think it's a big guitar, and jumbo frets usually people like it. They have a 0.6 tang width, like the foot of the fret has a certain width, and the slot of the fret has a certain width, and the foot of this frets are wider than the slots in the fretboard. That means the frets will compress it and tilt the neck backwards if everything goes right. But you never know how much that will happen. Like the kind of harder the board is, I think, the more it will happen. Like kind of the better the board is, the greater the effect will be. Sometimes it's kind of big, and sometimes really nothing happens. And so you always have to be careful not to sand the neck into a bigger back bow, and then you compression fret it and you end up with too much of a back bow. Because I think a little bit of a bow, like in a small way, is always wanted on every guitar, not to have buzz. So the last thing you really want is a back bow with strings on. So it's always a bit of balancing act. Okay, and you only put in the frets in the small slots on the portion of the neck. The 0 fret I would always saw to modern size, because if you put in a fret in this slot, you might just crack off the end of a fretboard. And also over the neck heel and on the neck tongue, usually I will widen the fret slots. No, I actually always do. It's kind of annoying to fret otherwise. I can only push in this 2 big frets in the fret slots with a fret press, really. So here I'm not actually opening up or sawing the frets slots all the way down. I'm just widening the entrance. So the frets will go into slots that are actually too narrow. I will use a 0.6mm saw first, and then a triangle file, and then a 0.7mm saw, and then usually they go in. And then you still have to be very careful when you press them in, that they're not tipping over. Sorry guys, it's nothing happening here on camera, but I think it will be over soon. I'm always just filming as I go. I don't. This all video making process takes a long time, and I'm not used to work in front of a camera all the time. I have a very small workshop, and I can't really put the camera up high because the ceiling is not high enough. So you can concentrate on this. This is work where you really have to concentrate often of the time, not to slip with a saw or with a knife or something, and then you just forget about the camera. That's why I still have to learn the whole. I'm kind of new to that whole thing. So I'm using this 3-cornered file to end the entrance, to widen the entrance for the frets. And then, if you don't do all the steps and you just start fretting, you will just it won't work, really. You have to find a way the frets go in, and again, different fretboards allow different preparations, really, as you always have to try around a bit with each fretboard. like with the first fret, see if it pops in, if it sits properly. Because you really don't want to pull out those frets again. And you have tear out, because especially when you have a fret that is a bit too big, a bit annoying to get out sometimes without leaving marks. So here I actually switched place, because when you widen those fret slots, you really need this neck attached to something and not move. That helps. I usually film myself on this table because there's nice light. But I have this kind of nice, what was it? How is this jaws called? I'm sorry, I'm not English. I'm not sure what this thing is called. It's Dumaxelted as well, and red. In German you can get it in green from Dictum. I think they're pretty much the same. And they're very handy if you wanna clamp a neck. Especially because with a normal vise you can't just clamp a neck. I have this small blue vise. It has rubber cheeks, and you can kind of clamp it in there lightly, and it will not move, it will not go anywhere. And it's really handy because you can move, as you can see, you can move the neck and the clamp together. So you can turn it around, you can change its angle, you can and when you work on frets, you usually want to approach the neck from different angles at some point of time when you round over the ends. Wow, and so it's kind of it's very helpful if you can work from different angles. So here I took the wire of the fret wire roll, and usually you have to bend this wire to fit the fretboard radius, but this was already pretty good. This was actually where I wanted to be, so I could save this step here. And again, if you don't have this kind of fret bender, and they cost $100, don't ask me why they cost $100. It's just a bit of metal, but you can't really build them yourself. And if you don't have them, you will just have a bad time putting in hard frets. If you don't have a lot of tools, you just have a hammer, and you want to try fretting something yourself, I recommend actually buying the cheap fret wire with 12% nickel, because it's way softer than the 18% nickel or the stainless steel, and those can be hammered way easier. If you hammer 18% nickel or stainless steel, and they're not already have the shape that they have to have for this fretboard, you won't make it, because the fret has its own will. It will remain as it is. But the soft frets that they used also in the 60s, they're kind of what they used back then, at least on many of those German guitars. You can hammer very easily, because once you hammer it, it stays. You can bend it with your fingers, and when you play guitar, this softer fret wire will use up a little bit quicker. But most of those old guitars had them originally in the first place, and they will still last for a long time. I wouldn't recommend those frets if you want to go on a tour with a guitar, or it's like this kind of workhorse that gets played a lot. But when you have a lot of guitars, like some, you're a collector, or you just have several guitars, you play it once in a while, you don't play it for 3 hours every day, then those frets will work fine. They will use up a bit quicker, but most guitars, to be honest, aren't used quite that much anyway. Those frets here are 18% nickel and the jumbo, so they really they're pretty massive, and they will just remain in the shape that they're bended in now pretty much. And if the sides are too high, then they will just come up, because the fret has a at a kind of strength on its own. It will just bend back to where it wants to go. I hope you can understand what I want to say. And here I just check how it works. You have to be careful that this fret doesn't just tip over and press into the fretboard. You will leave an ugly mark. But it sits well. So I will just do a few of those frets now. I think I showed fretting in the other 2 videos or series that I made, and I'm not using any glue or no protein based glue to glue on the frets here because the slots are kind of tight. But I think I didn't film this, but when I don't use glue to glue them in, I always secure the fret ends with super glue after I rounded them, the ends, before I level them, because you have to make sure before leveling that those fret ends or that the fret doesn't move when you file it. Otherwise it will just bend down with the file and not actually be leveled to the correct height. Yeah, I always cut the few frets to the roughly right length and then just put them in the right order onto the table. And then see how it goes. And this, sometimes these just go in and it's very easy and you pop in one after the next. But this fretboard somehow, I don't know, it was trouble. But they always, sooner or later you always win. Not nice to believe. I'm not used to talking over my own videos for so long. Like, you constantly have to find something that seems important enough to say. I don't know who watches this kind of videos. Like, I love to watch this kind of videos when people do them well. I still have to learn making videos, I think, with a bit more, to be a bit more entertaining. But then again, I think a lot of people watch this kind of videos just to relax, and they're kind of happy when there's not much happening at all. But you know, I try to do this in a relaxed manner, and hopefully in some days my voice will be back to normal, because I'm not always so deep, and then I feel a bit more like, I don't know, there's a bit more energy in it or so. But I could also imagine not talking at all over these videos. I don't know. I uploaded this long 7 videos, several hours of this Hofner brokered guitar, and I didn't talk over that at all because it would have I think it would have been too much work. This is already a lot of work. And I think people like to watch that without any voice also. Kind of raw and uncut. See, you have the chance of me seeing me making mistakes, and of course, when you work on this low or mid-range vintage guitars, you just honestly can't afford to. You have to work quick, otherwise you won't make any money. I never want to compromise the quality of the work. But sometimes, you know, there will be a scratch somewhere in a fretboard. You know, you could have taped it off. But if you have a beaten old guitar that is kind of, worn and played, I think 1 or 2 scratches in the fretboard or something don't really make a difference. And if that means I can sell the guitar for $100 less, I think most people will gladly take the deal. But one thing I never compromise on is the quality of the repair. Maybe I will compromise on the visuals, but not on its structural integrity. And I think I never had any complaints so far from people buying something afterwards. So seems to be good enough. When you do this every day, you kind of get into some kind of tunnel. Like you start focusing on getting better and better with the stuff you do. I threaded all the portion here by now a hammer. And then you kind of get an eye for detail that you didn't have before. And things pop into your eye that didn't pop into your eye before just because you do it every day. This is kind of, in German you say Fachidiot. And most people don't see the guitar or whatever it is that you're doing with the same eye. They don't have the same expectations. Sorry. Most people, there's 2 kind of people, I think. One really wants it to be visually neat, and the other one really wants to play well. And I think what I deliver when you buy a guitar in my shop is kind of usually higher. It's better result than what people expect, so they're usually happy. And I like that because I'm not a fan of returns and all this stuff. There's always a lot of work for a one-man business to ship something somewhere, and then, people wouldn't be happy because something fell off or so, and then you have to take it back, you have to pay for shipping, you spend several hours of not earning money, and I'm not interested in that. I rather want people to say, hey, this is cool, I'll come back. So it's just, I think I consider that smart. But alright, you never know. Usually the people that are successful with what they do, especially when they're dealers, are not the ones that sell the best stuff for the best price, but these are those that have managed to sell you stuff the lowest quality for the highest price. These are the businesses that really make it. If you do awesome work but no one pays you for it, you will actually, be bankrupt pretty soon. But if you do it other way around, if you sell crap and people actually pay a lot of money for it, that makes a successful business. So I don't say all big businesses are crap, but I think in modern times, a lot of those businesses, they're selling this stuff they can import very cheaply from China or Far East, and they just spend not their time and efforts on making a quality product, but they're spending all their time and money on marketing and on the market, on what is cool. Like they're really good in making people want things that they don't need, and they're way better in that than we all understand, I think. And that's why I'm not different. I often bought stuff and because I didn't want to spend more money, and then you end up with crap and you kind of have to buy again because you were too cheap. And this is just somehow, I think also,
has to work.
This is not how people, I think, are normally. I think this is kind of how we were trained to be in a certain way, always to buy the cheapest, because this is not good for you if you buy crap. It's kind of wasted money. If you buy something that will last a lifetime, you will be better off. If you buy a t-shirt for €5 and it will just last for a few times, then maybe you spend double the money and the t-shirt lasts 10 times the amount. That's a better deal, I think. Anyway, that has nothing to do or little to do with this guitar stuff here, but actually it's pretty related to guitar stuff. the guitars have become way better. Cheap guitars have become way better the last 20 years. Just because I think of CNC. A lot of those stuff where you needed an experienced woodworker before now is just easily done by a machine day and night. And the fret slots will be in the exact position. The bridges will be in the right position. The whole thing has a two-way truss rod. It's reinforced with carbon fiber or something like this. This is all not really expensive. It's just a lot of work when you do it by hand. The materials are cheap. The only thing remains really out of reach of cheap guitars is a high quality finish, I think, because this is just difficult to do a thin high-end finish from any machine. Anyway, I think the video stopped here. See you for the next part. Next week. Aye aye.